Hello everyone, channel update video today. I used to make these until a couple of years ago, and then I stopped, but I think it's interesting because you can look at different things also from the questions, from suggestions, and different aspects of how the channel goes and why and so on. Before I used to make a video update every 100 video, right? And I haven't followed the count anymore. I just make them every once in a while. Not much to fill gaps. Like if someday I can't make a video, for example, and I upload something else or something that doesn't require too much search, right? I'm actually going to fix some things in the next few days, so I will keep uploading stuff, but I wanted to tell you that we are probably at the beginning of a new phase that is perhaps going to look not very different from the one you have seen here, but that does have to do with some strategy, right? Some bit more of say mostly dedicated content that, as you have seen, especially in the last months, has been more frequent than the usual cycle that I still follow, and that I kept up with until November, let's say, which is in a sense more varied. Albeit, of course, it entails some types of topics that cyclically, but we're talking about like 30 to finish the whole thing at a time, so or even more, telling the truth now, so that every cycle basically lasts even more than 1 month sometimes. The channel in the last couple of months has basically surpassed the top that I had reached in summer 2021 before I started re-uploading the older videos that I also rarely subministrate to compared to last year. And I think I have just something like 300 to re-upload, because some of the oldest ones actually were fine, even as far as the picture copyright was concerned and so on. Now we still have some of the best ones from 2021, 2020 that I still have to re-upload, and I probably will also soon at some point. But overall, the channel has now, I think, more than 1,600 videos, all things considered, because I began to do things like, remember the one on the Grand Siècle or the War and Dentelle and such things. Those are more entertainment based, like with music and stuff. Nothing special, as you've seen, but it can be nice as a couture. And I plan to make also more of those, but just as a side weapon. Let's put it in this way. I don't expect to make lots of views on that. The reason, however, why things came back to the levels of before, I think, go obviously in line with the trend that I followed. Like, as you know, not last year anymore, now in 2023, but de facto up to last year, because I was still uploading them by this time of the season. I had re-uploaded a big part of the older ones, and I had basically severed the base of algorithmic views that, since I had started especially from the in fact the most successful videos, like in order properly of views down, I of course depressed the channel, and it was obvious, and also retrospectively basically the only way I had. Some told me, well, but what do you care about? After all, you used blurred pictures, even you still used Wikimedia Commons stuff at the time, and yes, you didn't really source them, credit them, but what was gonna care? Like, who's going to flag you? And I talked with other uh, con- say are called YouTube content creators, like some of the channels that resemble mine the most, and the response was like, "Bah, I had never thought about it." And some of these people actually used full resolution pictures from some prized authors' work, like the ones that work for Osprey or this kind of more visually oriented stuff. And I know that even big channels do that sometimes, but at least they have the complacency of transforming the content, which is actually always a gray area, because I know the copyright law, at least to that minimum, of realizing that basically everything that you upload can be signaled, can be taken down. Like any single phrase, assuming like this is valid for everything. Like when I write an article where I also have to present banally at a conference, like even a picture, I personally, by etiquette, always source that. Right, I give credit to the authors. I say go check this stuff, because I actually don't care so much about it, seeing how in practice things really work. But I also think that doing the right thing makes things better for everyone, and it's not much what can come back at me, if not indirectly, in that way. And I also frankly have a lot of stuff that I downloaded and that probably wasn't really so viable through the regular channels, right? So this is completely normal to me. But for example, even my university department library scans me stuff, articles mostly, that I just also use, I quote, etc. But let's say, what's the difference, for example, between that and something like making pictures? I often went to university before the digitalization was possible, because in theory it was like you can't copy anything, right? And I remember they made us come an entire book that you cannot scan entirely from abroad. Think about all like the guy that had to sand it, to move, all the energy, the time, whatever. For me, like spending, I don't know, 10 minutes with a camera taking pictures of it and giving it back to the guy, even telling him, look, I took the pictures and go home. And probably things are going to improve in the future, but it's obvious that as far as the pictures are concerned, even though YouTube doesn't have a technology that can even come close at this point of properly looking at the video image trace, right? The audio one is easy to track, but the video one is impossible. Still, when you have a total of several hundreds of thousands of views and or even millions of impressions like I reached here, things are a bit different, in my opinion. You can always be you can always get in trouble, and as you know, I don't want that to happen. Even the way I do it now, like with the pictures from the Creative Commons, in fact copyrighted, that only require credits to use them, even for commercial purposes like this one, is actually foggy in the measure in which you say, but how should this credit be given, right? I understand that those who upload those pictures don't give a damn about it. And I actually did find in the Wikimedia Commons some copyrighted pictures that were uploaded that I recognized, because I recognized the authors from the art and other publishing, in that were in fact illegally uploaded. But even there are some beautiful pictures from Angus McBride, for example, that are used here and there in presentations, whatever. Yes, but if it's a YouTube video, it can be even educational in purpose, it can be whatever. But if you still make money out of it, and YouTube, by the way, monetizes the videos, as it happened, if you remember, the summer before the last, and that brought me to monetize my own content accordingly, actually taking that decision of re-uploading the old content with different pictures. Everybody can tell you, like, you can't do this, right? So again, I don't know of even in bigger channels of major accidents regarding that. But since I have uploaded, again, more than 1,600 videos here, I think I would be pretty, disturbed to simply keep uploading knowing that something could go wrong. And this is what brought me to make all that re-upload. But I must say you have tolerated it. It wasn't a big deal. After all, I've kept making videos. It was crazy. You know that last year I was objectively feeling bad for reasons that were just sentimental in nature, and it took a while to come out of that. But now I am back on track of being, since that was the parenthesis also between the end of my doctorate and essentially restarting with scientific production, because at some point I had collapsed exactly that summer, because I said I can't. Like, I remember with my head, like it never happened to me. It was actually a mechanical difficulty. I was strained, morally had adrenaline issues, and exclusively because of what had happened to me privately. So it had struck, as you know, also deep chords as far as properly my medievalist background was involved, because I got heartbroken by a girl who essentially worked in that same field, and she had never attacked me in that way, but it was hard to bear for many reasons, and so I had a sort of like, I can't go on with this, at least of writing the articles, because the articles require a lot of concentration, a lot of work if you want to write a good scientific paper. For your academic curriculum, you should work at least 3 months continuously. And believe me, it's not easy. Also because, like, I fortunately had been working a lot. Thanks to my PhD, I had gathered an enormous amount of information. So I can spend it now. And probably I could go on just with what I have forever, as far as I'm concerned. I'm already... essentially, I've finished 2 works now, and I'm going to make a 3rd one. So I fully, and actually a 4th this year I'm starting as well, and I want to even start others. So it's, and again, I'm entering that phase, that moment. It's funny, actually. I may even make videos about this type of work, like reading my articles at some point, and I'll give a damn in that case about the journals or whatever. Well, okay, if they're prestigious, yes, but some are open source, and so I can simply translate them and nothing have. I can upload them here. This, however, doesn't mean that you will necessarily get to know who I am or what I do. Like, at least you know what you know, but you know that I always maintained a distance, I would say, not a barrier, because I think that at some point I will present myself more directly. There are some people who already know who I am, as a matter of fact, and they are some of the closest, I would call them collaborators, even though I work alone, but I am, for example, very late now in making a thanking video to our donor that, as we've seen also in the last year, has sent me beautiful ancient and medieval coins that I treasure particularly, and that supported me also morally through these, through some moments. And not that I need that specifically to get things done, but you know, when I make videos here, I do realize that there is, an exchange of some sort, and that the channel is growing. We will talk about this now, and also respond to some comments that I received regarding this, and how I could improve in terms of views, subscriptions, and so on, which is very important because these issues allow me to address certain aspects of the channel that, in my opinion, are sinking in the mass of views and subscriptions that I received, and that perhaps are misunderstood. Also, because of what happened since the other year, because you know that since then I even stopped making videos about the Kampfkriege and say military theory to war, because I had begun that the year prior, between 2020 2021. And this year actually we made an important amount of history the year past, let's say, videos that I think really strengthened Schwerpunkt's backbone. This is what I get from the stats and from everything. Like especially, I played a little bit with the topic choice, like trying to realize what is that could make more views or less views. Not directly, it hasn't quite guided my schedule per se, or topic choice per se, but I wanted to make something at a point, and that they had accumulated as a wish over time. And there were some things, as you've seen, about the traditional religion. We made that series about the Romans. We talked a bit more about also early modern warfare, even contemporary warfare. And I think the response has been positive. Like I have, that has given me a depth of perspective, a measure of what orientatively people like the most. And given that I have so much stuff to discuss, you can be sure that I will never run out of topics. And this is the most important thing, I'd say. Like, and that's what relaxes me relatively also, because I know that there is always kind of yet another thing that I can talk about, whether it can be also sometimes political. I haven't actually been particularly political this year, and the years before I had been more about that. I also would like to talk about the stories of fascism, Nazism, socialism, communism, and so on, for all the reasons that I already addressed here and there. That I think essentially we're living in a generation that, at least in which the younger elements that are also coming on Schwerpunkt literally lack the basics. Right here, I receive some comments sometimes that are genuine questions that make me feel ashamed, to the point of, you know, for the person who makes them, to the point of not publishing them, because we're at levels where I think people know history. Say they don't know anything about history, first of all, most of the time. But let's say what they think they know about history is basically now a sort of I saw it on YouTube. I watched it on what was trending on TikTok. Like, I won't even make examples specifically of this, or I could, but I don't want to be too direct. But we are at the point of, you know, okay, let's really skip it, because then it gets offensive in stating it, I think. And I can't help but seeing the world is going crazy for many reasons, or at least the masses are coming back to the place that mostly pertains to them during historical average, and as a consequence they're basically destroying themselves. And as you know, I think that everybody gets what they deserve at the end of the day, but it's not comforting just for anyone, because you are still always up to some standards to maintain, and so the whole thing risks to drag you down as well. And we are very much influenced by this type of stuff. I honestly don't think it's the media, the social networks. We are just showing what people are really made of, and it's better that I don't say what they are actually made of. It's not a surprise, right? That's the moment in which the benefit of the doubt crumbles, because finally you have the evidence fully displayed. And even though you know that the world still works because of, you know, some good elements, these are too few. They're mostly towards the elite. And they're also the most silent, in a way. They're the ones who at least don't concern themselves with most of what is, instead portrayed. today, and showed and displayed and exhibited and shouted and whatever. And it's part of the reason why this channel is the way it is, meaning that, of course, I also sometimes think, well, maybe this topic can hit among that pool in a way. But, aside from the fact that it's as if I was, sending out there in the world a sort of medicine for those problems, because what I think could help solving, at least my historical explanations always aim towards that direction, and they can offer at least some method to fix the thing. Then the will can't be put in there. I can't make a bit of motivational speech, but generally speaking, I do it through this continuously harsh, I think, but fair at the same time, evaluation of the current standards. And then that's when, at a point, you realize that there is a limit beyond which just the crowd mostly doesn't go, right? I think most of the content, for example, I upload here, that this is a problem, I think, is consumed not, say there is a core, of course, of regular viewers, generally speaking, are also the ones that provide with the best insights and understand the work, right? At least I have this amount of can be 200 people that regularly watch my content, and that are the hard stock that also sediment also the majority of likes, of views, of watch length, of comments, and that make basically the channel go. And most of them, first of all, are silent, which I appreciate in a way. And again, even the comments that sometimes are not this thrilling as I was saying before on average, but still display an important degree of, I would say, civilization at least, and quality, right, and understanding. The deeper meaning of the content is concerned, which, however, is really, in fact, ignored by the majority of the other viewers for many reasons that are completely normal, right? Chiefly because when a video becomes so-called algorithmic, that's how I call it at least, they start watching it just because it's higher in up in the YouTube search results or from Google or whatever, and so they obviously see the type of format and they legitimately think like I'm not interested in this. Like it's been proven that most people just have a very at least when they open YouTube, have a very low attention span, right? I don't know, I was told when we were 12, 13 in school that normally that's 20 minutes, right? So I presume an adult, also for how I treat the students that I have to teach whenever professors are unavailable at university, should be a bit more attentive. Like at least they sit there for 1 hour, an hour and a half, they listen. Yes, they make the questions that they make, but we discuss things that are slightly different, at least in slightly different ways in the way I talk about here. And it's a painful experience, telling the truth, and that's why I prefer by far to research and not giving a damn about the broader public. And I say it because just I am that type of person. I never had like a social interest, but not in the sense that I'm not social or that I'm not sociable, but that I do things with basically no interest at all in any other activity that is my own work and, say, an affection per se. And as far as friends are concerned, and you know that especially male friendships are a bit like, you know, you say hi and then maybe you see the person after 2 years without any problem. That's, you know, actually a much sounder proof of friendship, in my opinion, than many others. The interest I have in even just opening further doesn't affect me. And I say this because I've been told that essentially I could make more views if I, say, talked with other YouTube creators, right, with other channels, getting myself being known there. First of all, let's be honest about this. Nobody ever contacted me for that. Like, I had just one guy a couple of years ago that I don't know where he's gone now. He also had a channel. We made a very interesting. It was just a couple of hours interview about. It was technically about the Vikings, but it's uploaded. You can search that. I don't remember, unfortunately, now. It was so long ago. The name of the channel was A World of History or something like that. But you find it almost immediately in the YouTube search content. And nobody else has really contacted me. I've had someone. I actually worked with someone. It was just like a book review, right, or a booklet review, and I was paid even handsomely for that. But then, in terms properly of interaction, there were a couple of TV series who contacted me. That were at some point, I think it was Kings and Generals. For a couple of years in a row, they asked me to contribute to the script. I'm just not that type of guy. Like, I am behaviorally incompatible with these things. First of all, because I like being in control of things myself. I can't be like under an editor or anything. Like, if you like my work, you get it the way it is, which doesn't mean that I'm not going to fix it, right? But I don't follow other people's rules. I make my own way, and I just go the way I go. Secondly, I probably have never been contacted by anyone who wanted to share any thought with me. Actually, this fixing that I have to do, you will not see anything. I think it's all going to be behind the scenes. It's just I have to change the operative system. I have to reformat everything, so there will be a time of also of technical improvement, etc. But will probably open me again to more contact in some form. But I think, honestly, that my content is wasted for that type of in that type of interaction. I think for a number of reasons. The first one is that just by myself, I'm not going to host other. I would call them historians at that point, because I honestly don't watch any other YouTube channel, right? Actually, whenever some content pops out in my, say, advised list or things like this, I just say, don't suggest me this channel again, damn YouTube. Because it sometimes just even the presentation or the shortness of the content or the approximation of certain ideas or whatever I can expect, maybe even wrongly, it's in that it disturbs me. Like, I don't like to listen to them. I think it's first of all a waste of time, because they're always disappointing. It's not that I didn't try or that I didn't think that stuff was interesting. I also watched YouTube at some point in my life before starting this channel. Secondly, as a consequence, I properly reject from an ideological point of view most of the stuff that is sent out here on a regular basis. It may be the one that makes more views, and this happened in part because they were essentially teams with important graphic means mostly that invested money in that to make money, and they had counted on that in some way, and that also remained on YouTube because they did everything by the book for a long time, and I came relatively late in and just had also these other mechanical issues and so on. So it's obvious that they succeed. Sometimes I wonder, like, probably there is a peak point after which people say, you know what, I'm also fed up with this content. But it seems that fishes a lot, because people watch from any background. So it's actually, for many, I especially reading the comments, etc., realize that people are somehow enthusiastic about this. And they don't know there is any other stuff. Like, objectively, most people are not interested in the content I do, also because they just don't want to spend time about, first of all, a content that is so, say, large in general, and so complex, because at this point, like, I also stopped making too many, let's say, premises to my videos, and I suppose, just like when I write my articles or anything, that if someone is interested in my work, should have known my work first, right? Which I agree with. 1600 videos is a challenge, but there were times in which I answered comments, in which I had time for that. Now it's become actually too much. Like, if you want to know one specific thing, for all the stuff that I uploaded, there is surely somewhere that I explained this. And I think that even a bit the mystery about my being sheltered, let's say, may increase some sort of, legendary name around this channel, where the guy is a psychopath, or is an antisocial, or is an obscure figure, whatever. Just that may be one thing. But going back to that, I think of hosting or being hosted on some other channel, especially regarding the latter option. The thing there is that, first of all, when I go on somebody else's channel, I am not really myself in the way I am on this channel, because here, as you know, I can say terrifying things that so far, oddly enough, haven't attracted any particular hatred, rejection, shock, flagging, whatever, which is quite interesting. Not because I ever said anything particularly unacceptable or unspeakable in some way. It's just that, again, if you don't have a background, you will not understand it, right? And that's how I think my channel reacts with people, just as much as I react towards most things, like either love or hate. There is not a halfway, right? I have seen it from all the backgrounds, right? People arrive here and follow just because they are enthusiastic about it. Then at a certain point, I say something that they don't like and they hate me and leave immediately. There's not like a half ground, like, I was listening to this by chance and I will keep doing so, but I'm not interested in what, the core meaning of the channel really is. And the only problem that this core meaning is very, very prone to be completely misunderstood, mishandled, deformed, and in fact misused and even instrumentalized in ways that probably will harm me at some point, or at least will be thrown against the channel in some way, because the type of things I say, especially from a political, moral point of view, are objectively raw, crude, and they are beyond the normal shock or brutality that people really understand. The point is that I say them perhaps in a way that do not sound so bad, right? And so that even the fact that I have a sort of gentle way of expressing myself, at least in tone, and some people tell me, oh, I listen to you while I work, it's so relaxing. Well, I hope you're doing something, I don't know, very technical that doesn't require concentration. You listen to my videos. There are even people who said, I go to sleep listening to Schwerpunkt, and maybe that was a video on, like, the Roman invasion of Gaul. Like, given what happens there, you may not want to risk listening to me when you go to sleep, if it wasn't for the fact that very often these people display some disturbing traits. Like, in that case, something I disagree with, that, for example, it was actually a genocide. People it's like the new fashion of today, completely misusing the term, even though it has a very specific meaning, but we decide to ignore, such as using genocide for the ancient world. Genocide is not just killing a lot of people. It's how and why you kill them that actually makes the thing, or not. And yet some people get a taste of this aspect, of this crudity, sometimes of this darkness. Others instead live in the paradise of pink rabbits and think that this is just an informational channel where everything is so tolerant and nice, and it's actually one of the most viciously violent ones you can find in content and in ideas. And so that there is there's an interesting in between where lots of different human types gather here, and I appreciate that, because I realize that some also understand, of course, what I do, and they come in from the very different backgrounds from mine, but they still accept what I do and the ideas, and they think they are thought-provoking, and etc. From my perspective, it's as if I were always running short of expectations. Like, this is not because I need attention. Actually, I began this channel only because I was truly interested in learning, and I discovered that by making this channel, I learned a lot, right? Even if nobody had watched, actually the stuff I learned here fixed so many things, even in my work, in the things I teach and whatever. So it was fantastic as an experience, and that's where I literally don't care so much, even if I get such a few amount of views. Not entirely though, right? Because this does cost time and energies. So I have to take that into account, and I can't simply say, well, let's hope this channel grows still at the Bradipic rhythm, and and maybe it doesn't in years, right? So I will talk about the stats later, because those are very meaningful. You don't see them, but there is actually something going on that is worth noticing and appreciating here, that makes me confident that the channel is actually growing, and faster than it seems, like at least mounting up. And I have, again, here the stats in front of me. I think there's a pretty obvious trend that, all considered, is means that something bigger is going to happen. But again, being hosted to me is basically trying to satisfy somebody else's request, which is something that I just by nature don't do, which is not necessarily a positive thing. And not even, again, because I'm antisocial or whatever. It's because truly I think that what I have in mind is more important than what the others want, right? Which is a much more aggressive and kind of a ruthless attitude than the one I probably mostly display here. I could even make examples of that, but it would be somehow raw. In any case, what I expect from an interaction like that is, okay, you host me because, say, somebody told you that I make history content, and somebody maybe kind of likes it and says, I don't even know what we could talk about. If it were just an interview, like, why do you do it, do you think? But it would be interesting, and it could be interspersed with some sort of historical, like, what do you think about this or that? But at that point, I should be more like interviewed than else. Having a historical debate to me is extremely boring, for the simple matter that, first of all, I have historical debates literally at the highest levels. If I go at a conference, I do find literally the people that the other week there was the guy who was the president of my commission at the doctorate. For the first time met in person, because we did it at a distance, because there was still the pandemic at the time. And that's a person, you understand, has all a structure, right? He is built in a certain way. You know what he has studied. You know what his bias can be. You know what he knows more than you. You know what you know more than him. And you get to know that through books and studying. I don't think that this can be done through YouTube videos, right? Especially with, again, a channel with 1,600 videos. How can a person get an idea of what I do? Objectively, correctly, and why, and especially who are these people? Because, again, I can't boast all of these things, but I truly do come from a background where, every single damn historical statement must be substantiated with some evidence. So if you are going to play at who told you that this is like that, and if you don't have tons of books at hand to reconstruct the thing accurately, etc., it becomes like, but so you don't know this comma. So how can you say that? And it may escalate in anything that nobody wants to hear because it's just unintelligible, right? Who does know these things in the first place? Who does have those books on the hand or studied them for years or whatever? I, for example, research on a field where literally nobody did this before, and it's even a big topic military-wise, and that's I will probably, I'm telling you, I just from my referees and the last work I've done, I've written, they told me that this thing is going to change an important amount of things in the historiography of medieval warfare, because we simply didn't understand what was going on. And most of the things that you're going to get from my work is only if you listen to the whole damn work, right? Not if you say, but who is this guy, what he does, or let's socialize with him, let's understand the person behind the mask. I don't give a damn about that, right? First of all, because I don't really wear a mask, except the avatar, perhaps, and the fact you can't see me for now. But the question is, I have laid out all here. Why don't you actually study, right? That's what you do when you are interested in somebody's work. And if this doesn't even start practically, if there is no one that actually cares, and it is instead just making you a favor because he thinks that you're just a small channel and may help you to rise, well, no thanks. I don't think it's interesting. I don't think there is much to share there. If you haven't been properly bred in that kind of background, but it can be historiographical, it can be about tradition, it can be where I come from, it can be even just the things I went through, the countries I visited, or whatever, the stories I had. It can hardly make sense, and I do understand that I can't express this, but I think that the only way to express it properly is just following to the boring 2 hours long video, and if you don't want to do that, it's okay. I don't care to receive less views, and that's how much I don't actually want to improve on that line. And yes, to make the long story short, I do think that it's useless to make those interviews. I can make a better video that maybe a very few people will watch, by talking about history directly, than trying to convince somebody of things that they just think they are competing with you light for and that don't even know where to start from. And I've seen plenty of that. That's the reason why I stopped I stopped sharing stuff, I stopped participating in debates, sometimes even commenting, right? Because sometimes it's just like a simple question. Sometimes it's really nothing offensive or trying to bring you down, whatever. But I think that if I start descending at that level, I first of all lose an enormous amount of time that I can hardly afford. Right? Some people here come and say, "Oh, could you please put the pictures in order with what you're saying?" Yeah, by squeezing all that with which time, right? I upload a video every freaking day. I speak for 2 hours, 1 hour and a half every day. What you want is to see pictures in order. Yes, I understand. I would like that too. I think it would be better, but I simply don't have the time. And why, of all the possible things I'm doing here, do you concentrate on the pictures? As far as I'm concerned, I could even not make pictures at all, which would save me hours every day at some point, depending on the topic. Maybe less, okay, but still enough, because in that time I could do so much more. And focusing instead of what I'm saying, because it's what I say that matters, right? There are those people here who came and tell you, look, first of all, you understand, they just listen to the first 3 minutes, and of course they don't even know what you're talking about later. And why do you say that thing if you haven't even listened to the rest where I actually discussed that? Why do you think that saying this people is pronounced is spelled with this letter more or less than another, which is even acceptable properly in the English language commonly, just will change your life, will change anything, make me think further that people simply do not deserve history simply because they don't know anything about that. And they don't want to make any effort to learn anything about that. And that's what I do here, which is the only thing I think is worth the whole thing is actually what I say. It's actually the historical judgment that I have on this. Then we could discuss, and I never get that. I never get the thing like, this historiographical interpretation is wrong because this other guy wrote that, and on the basis of those sources, I am habituated to reason in that way. I understand that YouTube is not the best place to receive this kind of feed, but that's also why I don't understand why any other would be relevant, right? If you want to make a compliment, if you want to even make a comment to increase the stat, whatever, I'm glad about that. I'm glad that you write. I'm glad that you reach out. I'm glad that you are attentive in any way, even for those silly remarks. But at the same time, the stuff I upload here is potentially much more useful for you in other ways. And I have met people that told me, like, I stopped making this job and I went studying this thing or started this other professional path because I listened to what you said, right? And those are, frankly, and they are always private communications, and you know that I don't discuss them here. But those are the only ones that made me say, look, maybe this person will kill himself because of me. But I was able to, let's say, to at least make a person taking a further step, right, in a direction that made me feel that necessity of wanting more, of doing more, handling more in my life. And yes, that maybe even get yourself killed, but it will have be much better than simply haven't done anything with your life. It will have made that life more meaningful than you have just been sitting there waiting for your death. You know that I mostly struggle against essentially the inertia, the laziness, the sense of lack of meaning or purpose that we have essentially been imposed, and that, however, is so easy to simply reject and destroy if you truly have any standard, right? And it is true that this story of standards is always delicate, because it happens to me when I talk with, I don't know, with some women that maybe are on the right track, right? They're the ones that, start understanding, after all, tradition wasn't that bad, but they don't get the reason why. Because people are so habituated to that rhythm, to that lack of, of sight, of awareness, of knowledge at the end of the day, that they want to do things, but they simply can't because they haven't been properly trained, educated, disciplined to. And that's why also authority, but in the form of actual functional one, not per se, which fails otherwise. That there is no way around that. This is the beauty of it. That everything that is unworthy fails. Right? And it's always people's fault. We should first of all abandon this idea that people, just because they're people, are worthy of anything. Right? This is valid for anything in general. Right? There is a potential, but this potential goes unexpressed. It doesn't accomplish anything. You pay the whole price of that potential lost. And I'm not kidding about that. It means that you will be destroyed. So this is perhaps, as you know, the rhetoric that I use when we discuss those topics that you're somehow more interested in. And we should talk about this too, because sometimes people ask me specific content that is basically as different aspects of the same form. First of all, there is a crowd of people that revolves around my channel just because they think that I'm actually doing a favor to their people, to their nationality, to their country, to their culture, and all the things, of course, they don't know anything about by definition themselves, because they just think that there is somebody that is making them a favor, not that they are actually working or trying to do anything on their own about that. They just want to hear what this guy says about their favorite team, and I think that if I talk about tradition, I'm first of all there what they think tradition is, which has basically nothing to do with it, and they literally still don't. I haven't found, probably. It depends, actually. There are some things that the audience understands about that doctrine, but as all doctrines, at least from the way I express it, there is hardly anyone who understands them in the same way, right? There are people who think that I am fundamentally probably a crypto-Nazi. There are people who think that I am, after all, liberal. There are people who think that I'm racist. There are people who think that I'm actually, I don't know, all the opposites of this all. I may be pro-immigration. I may be, I don't know, embracing the American dream. I may be buying. Many people think that I support Russia. Many people think that, and you know why? Just because, say, I talk about military, we have gotten to the point in which people think that if I talk about military history, I must be not just right-wing per se, but I must be that specific type of, which is, as you know, I don't think at all right-wing at all, which is, in that case, Putinism or all this stuff. There are people, in fact, who think that I'm just probably a neocon. There are people who, in fact, also inexplicably follow me, even though I am pretty clear about the fact that what they think I am, I'm not, for years. I know of people who have, I know from the comments that followed me for years, and then, and you know that my content fundamentally tells always a bit the same thing, right, in these terms. And then, one day, who knows why, right, these people actually could follow for years, and then one day they discover, by surprise, that all they thought that I thought is wrong. And they don't know what to do. That's very funny, telling you the truth, to experience, but you can perceive, and then they, of course, that comes with a lot of nationalist and socialist paranoia, cultural inferiority, and all these things. But the interesting aspect of that is that how also myth and conspiracy theories are made. Literally, they make up an imaginary reality in which I must be confused. Somebody must have brought me astray. I may be naive, or this kind of things. I remember once there was one follower wrote, because you know that I don't accept often comments, because I think most of them, we may be talking about this, which is also interesting, may be harmful, not to me or to, let's say, de-channel per se, but just people who read that may be completely led astray in that case, relatively to the content. And there was a guy who, I don't know, I had started my usual rambles about tradition. And this guy is the typical, it could be the typical Trumpian, but it could be also beyond, because as you know, I was criticized even for saying that the alt-right exists, even though as a phenomenon finished, apparently, but you know, it's a few years ago, like the literal people who believe those things still exist, and those beliefs are actually pretty common, as I discovered. So it may be we may just be floating on a sea of fact of unknown that, however, it's pretty easy to know if one really looks at it. And it wasn't even a bad follower. Like, that's also mostly the type of person that follows me, and I appreciate maybe from the comments that are relatively okay, and then maybe they start following me on Twitter, and I randomly look at the profile, and I discovered that they support things that, of course, I'm completely against, and for some reason keep reposting my content for some reason. And this guy, I didn't publish because perhaps you don't know it, but when you comment, there's a filter, and I basically decided to filter all comments before being published at some point, because I began to insert old words that I didn't want to hear, insults, slurs, reference to specific ideologies, whatever. And then something kind of always passed the true anyway, and so I decided to check basically all the comments, which are not many, and I can do this. And the funny thing is that the comment, if you don't accept it, the person who posts it can keep seeing it as if he had actually posted it on the video, right? Even if they come back after days, it's always there, right? Then after some time, like 1 month or 3 months, I don't remember, that the comment disappears if you don't accept it. That some people figure it out, and because they come either from other accounts or from when they are unlogged or whatever. So this guy, I remember, started saying, and I didn't publish his content because it began to ramble about things like that there is a conspiracy, that there's that politician, that is the devil, and all these things. Convinced, like in a sort of preachy way, which, as you know, I do appreciate, but I also try to maintain within the boundaries of, common decency, as far especially as the broader intelligence, at least according to my standards, should be. And this person said, "Oh my God," and commented another thing saying, "Somebody, YouTube, after this conspiracy here, YouTube censored my channel. What is going on? The end of the days is coming." And all this stuff, and they don't even realize that it's actually me, or maybe they do, or they're acting, because I believe that people who believe in conspiracy theories fundamentally know perfectly well they're lying, and that's what they find enjoyment from. And I do even understand that. I mean, that's the easy way, right? At least like a temporary drug, like to consume, and not thinking about, in the longer run, what this is bringing you to. But that's what I have to cope with sometimes, and I realize that there is a great force actually coming from such audience that at the same time is, however, polarized. You'd say it's attracted to what I do specifically, because they see some aspect of good, but then they don't get the other part, that is, perhaps I'm actually against their own ideas at core levels that they wouldn't otherwise, they would blame me for, they would think I am the enemy, etc. They're actually following for such a long time. And honestly, from a strictly sociological, cultural, anthropological point of view, it's a psychological point of view, it's one of the single most fascinating experiences I've ever had, because you can play with them. And the interesting thing with playing with this game of comments or whatever, without showing yourself, right? Acting as a sort of demiurgus, without too much interference, overt one at least, on the outer side, but still managing things from behind scenes. And I think that's kind of what makes part also the channel's appeal, that there is a sort of mystery shroud in it. Like how do I make all these videos? Where do I get the information from? How do I arrange it all? How I choose the topics? What is that I'm actually saying? Because of course, I think a part why people stick around is that they want to know where this gets down to. I did promise something in the past in terms of content, in terms of let's say specific topics, and it is true. I will, everything I said that I wanted to do is on the list, etc. But it does have a cost even to organize this, in terms of what you can actually predict. I would say, I would put it this way, meaning what exactly? Meaning that, for example, last autumn I had a lot of ideas about some videos I really wanted to do. Then it happened I couldn't or wouldn't make them for some other reason. Maybe I made others that were even better ideas, and maybe others that were not such a great idea, but that altogether I think helped consolidating one aspect the other. What I'm honestly disappointed sometimes from the stats is when not much I make a video where I put a lot of effort in, but specifically when I see patterns, especially of topic preferences that skip what is, from my historical perspective, more historically relevant, important, necessary, inescapable, being ignored. This is something that happens very, very frequently, right? It may even happen otherwise, right? But when you have like several hundred views on a given video type or types, so even different topics that apparently have not much in common, and there is one video that you actually cared about the most because it's the most important, that by default is just ignored visibly, and at this point, given the views, given the traffic, it is all trackably evident. You realize the true reasons why many people are here, which have basically hardly anything to do with what you're doing, right? Especially when it comes again to the historical thing. When I started, for example, from a year and a half to make this historical regions series, and people began to think that I'm again making a favor to them if I talk about one place rather than another, right? They don't root for the actual historical analysis that I make in that video, for the fact that there is actually a massive diachronic evaluation with the better and the worse that obviously the analysis of these regions actually entails. No, what you like is that I talked about the place where you come from, and I don't think this is an intelligent thing at all, right? I understand it from an emotional point of view, but I don't make emotional videos. I make rational videos. Like if I have a historical opinion, it can be wrong, let's say, but it's based actually on some specific evidence, comparative evidence especially, and with, like, as you know, I made those videos like a properly a developed view over the political history of that place and the basis for it. And so the final appreciation is, of course, present as much as every place is interesting and worth attention, recognition, but hardly because I am flattering you for the place where you come from. Because no place in the world is flatterable in absolute terms, right? And it's actually pretty sad that people still are, so anti-traditionally, by definition, attached to a piece of dirt, which is literally the symbol of human fall and failure in front of the divine universal order. And I think that if one doesn't, that's also why people often want to squeeze in, but you see, nationalism is not so bad after all. If you don't follow those videos, for example, about the history of religions, and you don't want to understand what they actually say, so not what you think the topic of the video may suggest in your mind, which is a completely different thing that has nothing to do with reality, especially the one that makes me to make those videos, you basically deny the entire value, not just of the topic per se, but literally of the time and the energy that you're spending to listening to me rambling for 2 hours in a row, right? And that's what shouldn't happen. I think most people actually get it. I don't want to be pessimistic about this, but from the comments, the pattern is that one, right? And I'm referring to everyone and to no one specifically, because this goes by degrees. It's not immediately scopable per se, but some of it is clear, is eloquent, right? Some people, perhaps even just listening to what I'm saying right now, would think about it twice and say, wait, maybe he's saying making a point here worth listening to. And I do realize that for most people it's not a big deal. But just know that if you have exchanged this channel for that, festival of, let's, pat on each other's shoulders because, haha, we belong to the club of, the cool ones. This is not the place. This is not the right place, because I don't do the opposite either. I'm looking at something that goes beyond humans, right? And that we should be pretty much concerned about. And yes, not even what you probably actually think by this statement of mine is actually what you think I'm saying. I've been told everything here. I've been called all the different nationalities. I've been called, like, this guy is, some people have to correct my Christian beliefs. Some people have said that I'm ultra, I'm a priest. I don't know. Again, as I was saying before, the one thing and the opposite of it at the same time. And it's pretty weird. Again, it's pretty statistically obvious and natural and funny and etc. But the true problem at the root of this is that I'm speaking about this, and I hope to deliver my content in a successful way. And even if the other person may not understand, it's still about the quality of my speech at the end of the day. That may not be that great. I agree with that formally, but at least as far as the substance is concerned, should reach somewhere that I hardly see, right? So even this fact, again, that I should participate to other YouTube channel. Why should I participate to a channel that can simply trash my content or eventually misunderstand it? I know that it's about being known more. I perfectly understand that, but I'm not searching for that specific experience. I'm not going to spend more time to think to the way one person that I perfectly know how wrong they can misunderstand my content, just because in that case they are wrong, right? Because I make myself the scrabble for what I say, and then if somebody completely decides to misunderstand it because it's not there, I don't have the time after 1600 videos to teach him why he's wrong. This is typical in history. Like, this is when historians say, you know what, I have to work. I don't have time to waste in that way. And you say, but you will not get more views. I doubt that the views never came from that channel, fundamentally. From that, let's use channel, meaning not the YouTube one, you understood. What about stats, though? What about views? What about what I am actually getting? So, the projections are somehow good, right? First of all, we reached, the channel never lost subscribers, which I would say it's normal, but there are some YouTube videos where that does happen, as a matter of fact. In the last couple of months, views have gone dramatically up for some reason or another. This has been true since March, with some ups and downs, especially in autumn. People come back to work, they're busy, whatever. There is a normal flexion. Then in winter, spring, summer, things increase, right? Which means that at this point, if I put a video out there and it's clamorously clickbaitable, which I always kind of avoid it to be, unless I manage to form some kind of artistic thumbnail of some sort, which you can see with my powerful means that is literally paint. I can make this kind of triptychs or, as you understand, composed images of some sort. I don't care about. I have surpassed by far whatever I had reached just the other summer. That was essentially the top before, again, the re-uploads, and it's just overflowing that boundary. In 28 days that it's, I don't know for which reason here, the YouTube monthly standard, I make 25,500 views and practically 5,000 hours of watch time, which is not much. I have 210 subscribers in the last 28 days. I earned something. And I noticed that there is a threshold here, especially the one that goes above, let's say, more than 2,000 views in 48 hours. That is an important one as far as, especially as the subscription rate is concerned, right? I see that both subscribers and income increase dramatically, not necessarily in proportion to the views and the watch length. It can depend on different things. I don't know, but I had peaks that evidently didn't correspond to the watch length nor the views. So it depends on other ways people interact with the videos that I don't have any mean to predict. Maybe it's people with premium that pay for not watching the ads and so on. As you know, I'm always sorry for the ads, but since YouTube monetized my channel without even asking, when I decided to monetize, and at that point it's better to monetize in a dignified way, but I'm not after that. The main, because I don't count on this as a reliable source of income, or at least a satisfactory one, but it may be approaching that. It turns out that I earn more than the average for having such a low traffic and subscriptions, right? This is one hard thing. Here I don't post the actual trend because you could just see it, but if you look at the entire Schwerpunkt history, I did surpass, importantly, the impasse of last year. Especially in terms of watch length, I have, again, topped. And that's very important because it shows that people watch. That is to say, when people get to know my channel, this has always been the thing, the engagement rate, the watch, the second per, okay, my videos are long, so of course I will get more, a greater watch length than others. But it's particularly high compared to YouTube's average, something like 3 times higher, which means easily that this channel gets simply to be known out there. And it is true that, again, by participating to other channels, I could do that. But at the same time, everything I got from Schwerpunkt, I wanted it to get the slow but sound way. That is to say, if I had gotten more views from people that randomly came across my content and didn't have the time to digest it and were just forced to say, okay, let's listen to this guy because just somebody told me, I would have had a much less sound and supportive community that I have now. And that will be incredibly useful later, because the more it expands on this base and the more I will also be shielded as a channel when people will begin to talk about me, if this thing increases, as I'm seeing here. I count, this year to absolutely break the 10,000 subscribers. But the interesting thing about that is that the more this thing grows, the faster it grows. At least this is evident to me, given how the algorithm works. Because by having, again, had to re-upload most of my videos, of course I lost a lot of push that I had accumulated in the previous, say, 2 years. So considering that this is basically just 1 year after, and that I managed to break, importantly, the mold of the other year where I had most of the views coming from the suggestions rather than from the YouTube search. Let's say those were actually always greater, but they were topped almost by the suggested videos. It means that the substratum of this channel is incredibly strong, right? I just made it bleed out last year because of this thing of the re-uploads, but this base will quickly rise, and it turns out that it has actually risen faster in the last year in spite of having cut the legs to the channel myself, than it was doing before. Which means that as far as the projections are concerned, we could easily double or triple this in a couple of years, and possibly even more, because it turns out that I found out that, of course, first of all, as we were saying before, the more subscribers, the more views, whatever, the more people are simply going to share, exchange, send, whatever. I see all this from the analytics. It even tells me on which side my links are shared. I can see all these indicators. Today I know that they don't matter. What matters is to work, right? And let's be honest about this too. Like YouTube, this is another thing. YouTube has never been easy. People assume that, just you make a fresh content with a bunch of clickbaits and you build up a solid channel or base. This is false, right? If you look at the sheer amount of YouTube videos that are uploaded every day, you realize that it's a fierce competition, that it's a miracle if somebody even watches anything you upload. Of course, this channel has quality to it, because I talk about things that most people just are not going to find elsewhere. It does turn out people are using my content for making videos on their own. I'm sure about this. Somebody told me here that scripts are used by other, especially the big channels, right? On the base of, say, of my content, what I say. I still haven't taken a position on this. Of course, in the moment in which I publish this stuff, it's copyrighted. It's me talking. Even if they copied my content in a sense, which they will not do, they will just re-elaborate it. It's okay, but because everything comes back to me in a way or another, because there are people who are essentially thinking about my content. They're looking at it, they're listening to it. I'm just going to be known, right? And it is true that there is a bit of bitchy behavior in which people want probably. You see, when I started making videos here, there wasn't anything on YouTube about the Franks or the Merovingians or the Italian communes or the Longbirds. Then, surprise, surprise, of course, things would appear just as I started making them. There may have been somebody that said, let's make it. But the bigger channels objectively started scoping some topics because it seems to me I was talking about them. Maybe I'm just, paranoid myself. I always complain about others. Maybe it's the thing. I'm actually, again, that is flattering to me, on the contrary. But in fact, there are very specific and scientific means to see what videos are trending, what topics are making more views. And of course, that is properly designed for creators to make more views. I haven't prostituted myself like that, like those channels actually do. And that's the reason why I will always make content that those channels will never be able to afford the way they are. Because you could even start talking about, I don't know, the Merovingians or the Italian communes, or I don't know, the traditional religion, or about certain aspects of Roman warfare, or the Holy Roman Empire, these regional states, and so on. It won't be the same. Like, either you create something that is like, first of all, either this thing becomes a giant that really talks about everything and monopolizes the entire YouTube as a content maker, and so it has sub-branches and so on. Or, and that's just a few content. Or they will always remain based on things like, why did, I don't know, they will start splitting hair, right, in the type of historical content. Why did the Romans fought like this? Like, why did they use this specific weapon instead than this other? Oh my god, it's such a problem, right? And let's dig into the thing. And they eventually don't actually explain anything about that because they don't have a background like the one I have, right? That's where I count very much on in the first place, because that's the only thing so far has gotten me views, I believe. What other reason would attract people to my channel, right? That there is evidently known, right? I make videos that suck. I can't speak English well. I upload just still images. I have this lame kind of word pasted and copied kind of final credits line that is not even homogeneous in the page's size. It's just the worst, right? And I know that this is not the time in history where people like me succeed in what they do normally, but it's the quality of what I say, which is a wholly different thing. And again, I'm not even flattering myself, because most of the things I discuss, I obviously learned from somebody else. What I have is just a diachronic and comparative expertise on specifically medieval warfare that, however, has stretched also in other boundaries that allows me to evaluate in a kind of universal way, as far as especially military history is concerned, that I don't know around me, just in scholarship. And that's simply because I have a very peculiar background. I can't even say it's a better or worse background than others. Obviously, it's important, but considering, again, what I did, and it took a long time, right? So it's obvious that I would get to this point. And I have a broader idea on how this mean, after all, can make me go there in the medium longer term. I truly believe that. I've always been sure about Schwerpunkt's success, and we are in a phase in which this success is starting to materialize slightly. It's not a big channel, but it's not even completely irrelevant. It has an important base that can help pushing forward, and it's keeping to grow. It's always been growing. There is been nothing stopping it. I have been saturating it, the YouTube, with 1600 videos, and it will keep growing. And these videos will accumulate views, and thus will be rising in the in the search result list. And they will, of course, there will be other videos that will. But even if they're going to be at the top, at the very top, there will not be something between them and somebody else who makes a couple of videos my style, but then doesn't follow on this, and me. So I will hope to actually set the basis for something that eventually will be recognized, given that I'm not a team. I'm not working for somebody else. I'm literally doing the whole thing myself. So everything that comes back at me is what Schwerpunkt represents in itself. So I think that it, like everything in life, it takes time. You can't hope to earn a lot or to be known or successful if you say, oh, well, I come here, I just want to make 30 videos and having hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Some people make it. Statistically, it's possible. There is nothing strange even about that, and that's probably what you see the most. But then there is the other way, which means maybe I will get things later. But in the meanwhile, I will set a base for later to be much better than it's been for others. Because I truly believe that beyond Schwerpunkt, there is something more that this thing does. Because it's not just YouTube. That's what I mean. Like, people who at some point will want to ask for example, an historical interpretation or judgment or expertise. I'm always open to answering questions, telling truth as far as they're interesting, relevant, pertinent. Will not choose, let's say, the people who made, the scripts for, the bigger channels. And let's not make names specifically speak. It may be if they have done else, if they are able to sell themselves like experts or whatever, and everybody can enter in but it's not going to be the average story of somebody who just works behind that, right? As a matter of fact, it's relatively lame to do such a thing for a person who has that expertise. In fact, I can afford to do this and working at the same time, which is, I think, what also reinforces both of them, because as I said, aside from the views, etc., it's always been a secondary thing for me. What I got in terms of all these historical topics that I discussed, it was of enormous use. an advantage for my work, and vice versa, because from my work, of course, I could learn things that people don't discuss on the internet. And thus, for example, I've arrived to a point in which, I don't know, if I want to make a video about the Roman army without any form of script, I can't do it. And it takes me nothing to upload it, because I already have all the pictures. I don't have to work on it. And I discovered last December that in that mini-series about the Roman army, people go crazy for that kind of content for some reason. I don't want it to be the channel that says transform itself in the it's all about Rome, even though objectively, historically, it kind of is. But for reasons, again, that, for example, in this way, if I say this statement, 70% of the people will not just not understand it, but will have to say that it's wrong without even knowing what I actually mean. And that's why you have Schwerpunkt and hundreds of Roman history videos to explain that. Most people don't know the playlists. Most people don't know the Wolf von Clausewitz series. Those are things that you must learn gradually, and that I think are out. And I've seen that there is an interesting traffic revolving around the playlist as long as the channel grows as well. And that's going to bring in, and is bringing in, people. Why is there's increase? It's obviously algorithmic. It's obviously, again, more people subscribe at a time, but because when people find the channel, they dig into stuff I have here, right? So I don't see where this is going badly after all. I know it's a disproportionate amount of videos so far, but that's exactly where I wanted to go. There is a saturation strategy, as I called it at some point, even in the channel intro, because in description, I mean, because it's literally what I planned to do since the beginning. And it was obviously meant to work on the longer run. And now it does turn out this thing is expanding. And it's expanding faster than I thought it could. I struggle to get, I don't know, sometimes even 1,200 views in 48 hours last year, because I had, again, cut the base of the channel. Now I've simply taken off in the last months. And by this rhythm, it's going to be easily, a much bigger thing soon. I count on it. Just by the sensitivity that I matured over the years, knowing how this thing actually works, because YouTube algorithm is much simpler than it seems, telling the truth, or at least it's much more complex than it seems. But all the factors are directly interdependent. So if you get more views, the whole thing permeates itself. It's mostly algorithmic. It's mostly based on this fact of how much a video accumulates likes and views in the interest of time. And that's why also the videos were not so easy to find so far, right? They didn't rise to the top. They gradually would. And that's how it works. It's complicated. I could make an entire video on how this whole thing works, but in short, there is no other way to rise, and to rise to become big the way I do. And I'm going to reach soon, if everything goes the way, the rhythm of my work remains the same, we're going to go in the tens of thousands soon. And if that's the rhythm, and I'm keeping to do exactly the same thing, and so this thing simply accelerates in that way, the hundreds of thousands are close, relatively close, right? In some years I can simply be there, and at that point it will be okay, because it's simply something I can keep doing, especially if it brings in income and it makes me stay connected at that point with a broader audience, and I can participate to stuff and keeping to publish, right? It's just like another job. It's fine to me. I have time. I have patience. What's gonna stop me? maybe death, maybe illness, maybe my house explodes. Well, that's always possible. But for the rest, that doesn't have to do with the channel. So as far as the channel is concerned, I will not be particularly concerned about it either. Something of that kind happens in the first place. Thus, I see it goes fairly well. Now, is there something you can do? Of course, as always, there is a lot you can do by sharing and all that stuff, but it's useless even to say it, right? It's kind of obvious. If you care about the channel, talking about it, posting it somewhere, if you have the chance, even just on your profile, on Facebook or on Twitter, whatever, it can be useful. You can bring people in, and I see these avalanches every time I make, for example, a video that is particularly successful. Immediately on Twitter, there are lots of people come in. Not lots in the sense that I have many people there, but I can simply measure that it's that easy to eventually get people who don't know about that. And most of this whole thing is let Schwerpunkt be known not like another channel. Not like someone you can simply interact with, or to hear interviews with, or debates with other channels, because I don't give a fuck about that. And that's the beauty of this channel. That I'm not here to make a favor to anyone. I'm just going to do something that can be useful to those who are willing to improve their lives by themselves, though. Through maybe some insight, but chiefly if they really want. That's what I actually say. And that's why you are important. You're not important because I can get another subscriber or another view. You're important if you think that what I said is the cause of your tangible achievements. You may even be wrong in that. Of course, in that sense, I would profit without merit. But in general, I think what I do here is important. Not for me personally in particular, but I think that some things I say you wouldn't hear anywhere. Either because people are scared to say that, because in fact they're more out there public figures. That's yet probably another thing that I will never be. Right? I don't care that. I don't care about that level of attention. I don't care about showing myself up. I'm insensitive to that. Of course, at some point, if somebody calls me anywhere and go talking, you would see me, you would know me, but it would always be about my business that we can, of course, all profit from, but in ways that are not the conventional means of profit. Something that can make you possibly profit much more in a very conventional way, but passing through something that most people say just, but this is doomed, this is not immediate, this is not cheap, quick, immediate profit. I've never reasoned like that. And I'm too old to change. And I'm also too advantaged to, being in need of something else. So this is a huge opportunity, as a matter of fact. And I know very few people do what I do, at least in this format. And then I still think that they are not exactly what I think I would do, right? For example, the channels that are more similar to mine very often, in my opinion, are not proper channels historically. They have a specific bias that I think it's unscientific, that I believe it doesn't even take in consideration the most essential aspects of the whole. The thing I complain the most about is the one of, let's say, explaining broad historical questions in, say, 15 minutes. How can you do that? right? There is not a magic place where there are professors that can tell you, look, in 5 minutes I tell you how it is, and you can go and sell in it. How do you think that reality works? Right? The opposite way it does. You know, smaller, more compact explanations are the ones that explain less. That's kind of obvious. You cannot master a topic just by repeating like a parrot what you listened to in another, and that's also why my own videos are misunderstood. Because most people approach them in that form, and just every once in a while try to venture in the hours long content, and then they come about it scarred, or they said maybe this is different from what I thought, and maybe that's when the love or hate thing clicks, either in one way or in another, right? Because there is no other way to follow, to consume my content. So we will see this, because again, I will keep making videos, so I don't have any limit that I'm imposing myself, saying I will do this just now only up to some point. And that's, I think, an interesting way of seeing the investment in Schwerpunkt, because you know that I'm not going to quit, so it's also a way to provide, first of all, with security about what I can provide with. As I said before, I can make still question and answer videos. Last year I made some at a time, but I hardly get any kind of real historical question. So that may be, again, an indicator, a disappointing indicator. However, I'm also covering topics that probably will just answer many questions. Once I was complaining exactly of this lack of, don't you have anything to say about what I assess historically? Because, again, that's kind of my job. So that's the most fruitful aspect of my work, and nobody cares. They do, but they don't have anything to ask. It's somehow curious, right? Maybe people are timid, I don't know. But somebody said, you say all, so nobody has anything to ask. Well, I doubt it's the case, right? Because I know that it's not all at all, and that's, first of all, why I can't finish this ever. And second, even if the content, the topics I discussed was just the one I already uploaded, but it's not going to be like that. So it's crazy, because I feel as if, again, even in medieval history, like, we hadn't even began to discuss anything. When I make those videos that start like, a very short introduction or a foreword, just a bit of lexicon. A very short introduction is just, let's try to make a basic video in which we outline the major dynamics about this policy, and his basic evidential history, something like that. A foreword is like saying, let's, before talking about this topic, reflect on these aspects. And so that's how we should approach the whole thing. And then normally make 200 videos on the same topic. So that's and most of that I still, of course, have to do, to finish. That's how it's going to work. It's not going to be easy. I can promise you that. It's going to be terrifying, as a matter of fact. But I'm okay with it. So this is where the channel stands so far, and it is frustrating to see that the growth is still slow. I agree with that, and I agree with you also from the other side. But this thing is really advancing. It's not descending, right? I can tell you that I don't lose a subscriber in the broader balance from September, right? We had only daily scores, and traffic is increasing, and subscribers are increasing, and it's accelerating. So we are exactly on that moment which the ramp starts going up. I feel it, right? And even if this rise may look small to you, actually, if you looked here at the picture, the trend is quite eloquent. And we are almost 7,000, which, again, not this huge number, but thinking of 7,000 of you in some arena or, other large space, I think is impressive. It's really like a very composite picture. I see it also from who you are, etc., where you come from. It's mostly always the United States, of course, but there is a very important presence from many other countries, from Germany, from Canada, Australia, Poland, Italy. We have lots really of people that are starting to be serially interested also. You would think from a geographical point of view, it's important to have that kind of concentration. Think it this way. There are people around you normally that may know that I exist, or at least that are going to be invested by the things I say indirectly, even maybe not knowing them, right? So the point is that we can make it work. It depends solely on us. And we can make mistakes, we may be wrong, but that's only the base for learning how to do things better. So you may think I'm stubborn because I go on the way I do, but I think it's worth it. And I think that following intuition, when you actually think that the thing you're doing is right morally, not that is necessarily right because there is a material function that disagrees with that, or better, that you have to just only struggle against. I think it's the most important thing. I think that's how the best actually is done. And we have been dishabituated to the best. We have been dehabituated to fatigue, to sweat, tears, even just things that make the whole thing worse unfairly. But that's the test, right? For those who actually are more determined and resilient, and that know what they want. So I surely appreciate enormously everything that you have done so far for this channel, because without you, of course, as I was saying before, I would have continued doing it, likely. But the way it is, and the persons that you are, as opposed to also the ones that could or couldn't be, considering also the number of subscribers, why we are this number now, I think defines us that way. I think it does speak of what we really want. So we are all different, but we are all searching for a common answer, and we're trying to find that out together. And I think that if you see it from this perspective, the fact that I have to maintain some standards, and that I have to, of course, to be harsh, to be sometimes cold and authoritarian and disciplinarian, whatever, but that's part of the role, right? I know what's going on. I'm in charge here, so even what I do, of course, that you don't like, just bear in mind that stems from this role. And it has a purpose, because I handle it. I have the responsibility. You accepted that. If you are here still, it means that you accepted it. So we all know how it works, and this can be a mean of disciplining ourselves further, but the others too. Because we are actually fighting against mediocrity. We're fighting against carelessness. We're fighting against cowardice. We're fighting against those who would like us to be like them, to make them feel better about themselves and their insecurities and their complexes, but that we don't not give a damn about, because all what we want is to be better. this is what matters to me and to you. And we all know it very well. So I will keep you updated. If you want more often, there are lots of things I can ask you. For example, what kind of videos you would like to see. That's very useful to me. I will not do it likely, but your requests are important to understand better. Also, how I have to operate. And naturally, something will come well along that line. So it's not completely useless. But maybe there will be something that is specifically designed to make you think about what you want in a different light if you check it. I'm going probably and hopefully to establish a sort of firmer routine of some sort. Also, I will probably reaffirm some cycles or maybe establish some new rhythms, but I will probably use some pneumatic hammer at this point, because it's going to be intense. Of course, so some topics we have to address that are heavy somehow. So I really think that we can continue like this. For today, however, I stop it here. I just hope, as usual, that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it. Otherwise, leave a like or subscribe to my channel if you're interested in my upcoming content. I thank you heartily for listening to me. I wish you a nice time and see you next time. Bye.